Throughout the late 90s, the Japanese manga magazine Weekly Shonen Jump would undergo a great metamorphosis. It would shed many hit series at the time, struggle with declining circulation numbers and grabbing readers' attention. But bit by bit, series by series, the spotlight started to return to it thanks to hits like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Hoshin Engi, and One Piece. These are just the beginning though, with today's video covering an exceptionally great year for the magazine, seeing many hit manga debut. So without further ado, I present to you Weekly Shonen Jump in the year 1998. Before we get into anything new, let's see what was going on in One Piece throughout the year. First, we would close out on Orange Town with Buggy, which I covered last time. After this though, we would see quite the peculiar chapter for the series, a bottle narrative where Luffy and Nami set foot on an island featuring Gaimon, the little dude stuck inside the treasure chest. This chapter always stood out to me because there's nothing else really like it within One Piece. I also feel it embodies the series well, telling a short self-contained narrative with a nice emotional payoff at the end too. Another aspect of early One Piece, like Gaimon's chapter, that I feel goes underappreciated is the banter between Luffy, Nami, and Zoro, and this moment of relative peace as they've begun their crew. After this, when more crew is added and we're off to the Grand Line, there's a lot less time where things feel calm and as intimate. This vibe is a big reason why I actually really love Syrup Village. This arc is often labelled as one of the weakest in the series. It doesn't stand out to people, likely due to it being less flashy than what comes before or after, but its setup is something I really dig. The crew are looking for a new boat and we're introduced to Usopp and all of his problems and way of life, of how every morning he runs through the village and shouts, "The pirates are coming, the pirates are coming," this being a nod to The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Usopp also referencing through his name Aesop's fables and also including the Japanese word lie within his name, Uso. I highlight all of this because it might be the most obvious example of how interconnected Oda is with their wordplay and ideas. He does this kind of thing all the time and this playfulness is built into the core of One Piece's world. How Oda also goes on to characterize Usopp and build on him throughout this arc and the entire series is also a lot of fun as the things he lies about end up becoming true. Pirates do in fact come to the village in the form of Luffy's crew, but also the Black Cat Pirates run by Captain Kuro, who is masquerading as the butler Klahadore on the island. As One Piece would progress, we would see countless characters create various plots to take over an island or do this and that, but none are quite the same as Captain Kuro. His reasonings for doing what he does and how he goes about them are so antithetical to Luffy at this point in the story. I think he makes for a profound antagonist so early on. Despite being a pirate, he despises them, hates their life, and would rather stay hunkered down and comfy than risk a life of adventure. He uses his power in manipulative and crafty ways, orchestrating this whole plot to steal the fortune of Kaya, Usopp's friend, which involves plain civilian murder while also lying straight to her face and sacrificing his own crew in the process. None of these things Luffy would ever do. He holds no ounce of loyalty or love for anyone but himself, which makes him an absolutely perfect One Piece villain. This arc also includes someone who elicits the exact opposite emotions, Usopp, whose story in Syrup Village acts as the major human component of the arc. Usopp, like Kuro, is full of lies, though he does so in order to entertain others, and also in order to help others. We see this with Kaya, where his stories lift her spirits. He also tells his tall tales to Apple, Carrot and Onion, his crew, providing the kids with someone to look up to while also engaging them and treating them as equals. We also learn that the source of these lies was also out of a desire to help, saying the pirates are coming while his mother was on her deathbed to potentially give her hope that his father had returned in her final moments. A part of this too may be Usopp desperately wanting to break free from his lonely island fate. He wants to believe that there's more to the world and his life than just what's on this island. Like Luffy, he shares a similar yearning for freedom and the life of a pirate. I could honestly talk about Syrup Village at length for minutes on end. It's an arc filled with great moments, emotional ones, funny ones, and no matter what, I will stand by that I think it's an often overlooked arc that deserves a lot more respect. That being said, I don't blame people for overlooking it though, as after the crew get their new ship, the Going Merry, and have Usopp join the crew, they head for the seafaring restaurant, the Beratie, which is a massive fan favourite arc from the early parts of the story, and for good reason. Beratie is an arc all about food, and for all that goes on within it, firstly I want to focus on that as a concept. Food is incredibly important. Everyone eats it, and the types of food, how it's sourced, made, priced, etc. can say a ton about a world or a story. We even get introduced to this arc through Johnny and Yosaku, with the latter having scurvy, a deficiency disease that plagues people on the seas through them not getting the right amounts of nutrients like vitamin C. Here Oda links the common fact associated with pirates and spawns the idea of a seafaring restaurant, something that fits perfectly into One Piece's world. It makes so much sense, but also broadens it at the same time. It's the first setting that's also super eye-catching and different. There's just a lot of fun to be had here, as its cast of cooks, including Zeph and Sanji, are extremely charismatic. We get some downtime as well, as Luffy needs to work to pay off the damages he caused to the Beratie, which leads to some great comedy. Soon enough, things start to get crazy, with the restaurant being attacked by Don Krieg and his men, one of the most powerful pirates of the East Blue. Beratie gets a lot of world building done as an arc, in this food related sense through its chefs and food, but it also gives us hints at how messed up the Grand Line is. No ordinary pirates can survive there, which is encapsulated in the visit we get by Dracul Mihawk, one of the 7 warlords of the sea and greatest swordsman in the world, which suddenly involves Zoro heavily in this arc. The fight between Zoro and Mihawk is iconic. It's an early moment of greatness for the series that teases the vastness of the world and how far the characters need to come in order to deal with later threats. Zoro's defeat, where he remarks that he'll never lose again, reinforces this too. We are constantly given new things to look forward to in the future through these character building moments. Sanji and his backstory act as the emotional crux for this arc. Him not wanting to waste food, with him even serving the enemy pirates, is recontextualized when you learn of his past. We've had backstories before. In a sense, Chapter 1 serves as Luffy's. We've had small looks into Zoro and Usopp's, but Sanji is where I think Oda's penchant for tear-jerking backstories comes to the forefront. This, for many people, might be one of the first points where you get a bit teary-eyed reading One Piece. Seeing a child, Sanji, and Zeph starve on a small island for weeks to months, only to reveal that Zeph ended up eating his own leg for Sanji's sake. It's kind of obvious in hindsight, but this floored me reading it for the first time. I wouldn't say Oda's characters have a super significant amount of depth to them, but they are well written and emotionally punchy. I think this, along with their likable personalities, led to many people forming a connection with them and thus becoming fans of the series. I mentioned in the last video that One Piece was popular from the very beginning, and 1998 doubles down on this, with it getting 13 color pages and 6 covers throughout the year. Everyone can relate to things like loneliness, wanting to follow a dream, or even being hungry. Sometimes all you need to do when writing a story is to convey something very simple. If that reaches people, then you've done a good job, and One Piece is the king of this. These simple things also build on one another, which Beratie as an arc has showed rather effortlessly, with Mihawk and Zoro, Sanji's backstory, and also an event that goes rather unnoticed intentionally. In the midst of all this chaos, Nami disappears with the Going Merry, kickstarting the next major arc, though we'll have to save that for the 1999 video. We aren't quite done with One Piece though, as it would get a short animated OVA this year as part of the 1998 Jump Super Anime Tour. This would commemorate Shonen Jump's 30th anniversary while showing pilots for 3 new anime, one being Sekimatsu leader Denkateshi, one being for One Piece, and the other we'll save for a bit later in this video. One Piece's OVA was titled One Piece Defeat Him, the Pirate Ganzak, and would be produced by Production IG, lasting about 30 minutes. It featured an original story set between Orangetown and Syrup Village, where Luffy, Zoro, and Nami save an island from the titular Ganzak, a pirate with big crab claws. And if you've ever wondered why the pages of Volume 5 of One Piece have these illustrations for characters that don't show up in the manga, well, this is where they're from. Post this, One Piece would grow and grow. It would get more popular and receive more supplemental media or adaptations through different anime, but you'll have to wait until the next video to hear any more about them. For now, let's set sail to the first manga to debut in 1998. Our first brand new series of 1998 would be Garo, lasting 9 chapters and 1 volume by Akitsugu Mizumoto, debuting in the very first issue of the year. This peculiar series saw its protagonist Garo, a boy with hair instead of fingernails, explore the human world he'd been divorced from since birth, eventually battling other demi-humans in a contemporary Japanese setting. I think a central idea is that Garo is a human paintbrush. There's a lot of art-related elements to the series. The kanji even that makes up the series' name is one that's illustrative in nature. Garo's electric discharge ability also lets him draw electricity, and it also seems as though he had a split personality, which has been compared to Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh!, a very popular gimmick at the time. There's a lot going on in this series, and even with its quite detailed art and different approach, it seems it wasn't very popular, being one of the quickest axes Shonen Jump has ever seen. Just a few months later into 1998, we would get one of Shonen Jump's biggest shakeups ever. A batch of 5 new manga were set to debut. And for those unaware, Shonen Jump generally debuts 3 to 4 manga at most at any given time. The extra one might not seem like a big deal, but this is the equivalent of a quarter of the magazine suddenly changing, an event that does not happen often. This would come about partially due to a few big series ending and the cancellation of a few other series. This is also not just a matter of quantity, but also prestige. Not all of these 5 were hit manga, but there will be names among them very familiar to you, and this bold decision by editorial would end up greatly helping 1998 in being a year of profound positive change for the magazine. The first of these 5 new manga would see a tried and true veteran return, Masanori Morita with Rookies, lasting 233 chapters and 24 volumes. Rookies is a delinquent baseball manga, and with no hyperbole from me, it is one of the best manga Shonen Jump has ever serialized, and chances are, if you ask someone who has read Rookies, they'll say that, at the very least, it was very good. The reasons behind why are ubiquitous. Morita's art stands out as being detailed and unique, especially in how he draws characters with these realistic but still often absurd facial expressions. When the series needs to be silly, it's silly, and when Morita needs to convey impact through the baseball matches or through more dramatic moments, he amps up his art to create some really evocative moments. At its core though, Rookie shines thanks to its cast of characters and the journey they all undertake. While most sports manga predominantly follow the team and the high school players, Rookies does things differently through its splicing its ideas. The baseball does have a lot of focus on it, but so does the build-up of the entire team through their school lives as delinquents. And this comes about through our primary character, the glue that binds everything together, the new teacher to Futako Tamagawa High School, Koichi Kawato. Kawato is easily the highlight of Rookies, a brand new teacher brimming with enthusiasm and hope for his students, though he also grows and learns alongside them through the series, having to overcome a past related to the use of violence on prior students. What he says could often be interpreted as corny, spouting lines like, "This world is full of hope," or "Flutter into your dreams, glitter into tomorrow." To the students, notably the delinquents of the school, this rings out as silly, hopeless drivel, another adult singing empty platitudes. Why Rookies works as well as it does is because I feel it executes some of delinquent manga's core thematic qualities brilliantly. Students at this age go delinquent for a myriad of reasons, but often it's to garner some kind of control as they hurtle towards the time in their lives where they'll have to enter the job force and lose all semblance of control over their lives. Most of them don't have any idea where they'll be once school ends, they have no prospects or dreams, or even sadder, feel as though those dreams are unobtainable. They are branded by themselves, their peers, or teachers as outcasts, problems that either need to be taken care of or left to rot. With this in mind, for delinquent manga, you can focus on these aspects and tell a story of tragedy, of how the schooling system and society at large has failed our youth, or, in Rookie's case, you can take a more proactive and positive approach by including a shining example for these delinquents to learn from. an adult, a teacher who sincerely cares and wants to foster growth amongst their students. Kawato does this slowly. He gradually gets to know these students, gets beat up by them, learns of their past, where their baseball team was suspended due to a violent incident on the field. One by one, he helps them overcome their issues, assures them that he will always be there for them, and despite so much resistance, he stays true to his promise. Eventually, these students crack. They come to see that someone has finally extended a hand and they take it. Kawato's influence is infectious. More and more students join Kawato and the baseball team. Through hard work, dedication, and mountains of prep talks, something truly special comes into form. It actually takes close to 6 volumes or 44 chapters until a proper baseball game begins against a rival team. Shonen Jump is known for its fast-paced stories and not letting things simmer, though there must have been enough trust by editorial for Morita to pull this off. Furthermore, Rookies isn't just a baseball series, it's a drama, its characters are compelling, and how they interact with their delinquent status, with their new teacher, and with the sport of baseball all add up to form the basis for a team which you come to deeply care about. Winning doesn't just mean victory for its students. Going to the Koshen isn't just this monumental achievement, it also represents these students who were once cast aside, clawing themselves back up from the depths of the hell they feel trapped in. To show that they are worthwhile, that they do deserve all the love and respect any other person deserves, and beyond them being viewed this way by others, it's also something they themselves need to come to believe in for their own futures. They need to believe in themselves. Rookies is important. It's a genuinely inspiring series that I think fans of sports manga or drama series would really enjoy. It's also one of the most mature series to have ever been serialized within Jump, though still retains a lot of tropes or elements present in the shonen manga you're familiar with too. Despite being very popular and selling well, Rookies, as well as every other series from Morita, actually hasn't received a full anime, which is a crime. It has had a live-action series and movie, however, which is very well regarded. They came out in 2008 and 2009 respectively, a few years after the manga would end. Rookies remains in the conscious of fans around the world through merchandise, pachinko, a stage play, which is customary at this point for every Jump series, but it is a shame that Rookies hasn't seen an official release in English in any capacity, and while the fan translation is pretty solid, I'd love to see more people read this series since it's so good. Debuting next in this batch of 5 manga would be Shonen Tantei Q, lasting 15 chapters in 2 volumes by Enjin and Shinga Gin. Sadly, not nearly as big of a hit as Rookies, Shonen Tantei Q was another attempt from Shonen Jump to try to emulate the success of their rivals in the other big shonen magazines, which were currently experiencing great waves of success with Detective Conan in Shonen Sunday and the Kindaichi Case Files in Shonen Magazine. This is something Jump has been trying to do for the past few years, but sadly a detective manga would never click, evident by this series not lasting very long. It also sounds as if editor-in-chief at the time, Kazuhiko Torishima, didn't even want to chase these trends and recognized how much work and effort went into these 2 big mystery series, but due to pressure from higher up, eventually Shonen Tantei Q was greenlit to be serialized. The story follows a young child actor, Kyuta Hanabusa, who stars in a drama with the same name as the manga, but things start getting real fast, with the fake murders turning into real ones, and he must use his natural genius to solve cases. The general premise sounds fine, though the production of the manga was beset by many problems. Structurally, the mysteries weren't well written, with there being no real clues or hints which might be tied to the artist Shinga Gin only receiving scripts from the writer a week beforehand, so he wasn't privy to the mysteries himself. Reception to the series is universally negative, with people tending to mention how they sympathize with the artist who had to deal with the mostly unknown writer. A bit of a narrative has formed around this too, as Shinga Gin would sadly pass away in 2002, having not made any more manga, with many blaming the author Enjin for ruining the artist's career or even contributing to his death. A lot of this is hearsay, but I thought I'd mention it as it surrounds this series' perception. Entering the middle of the batch of 5, we have Kappa Revolution by Gizante Sekicho, lasting 23 chapters and 2 volumes. This would be a gag comedy manga originally serializing many one-shots before its full debut, seeing a schoolboy named Masashi accidentally wake up a Kappa from hibernation while burying a goldfish. The Kappa Hirobo then makes Masashi take responsibility and forces himself into his home where he terrorizes his family and interrupts the human characters' lives with various evil schemes and gag antics. Unfortunately, it debuted in a rather stacked year, so it didn't get to stay around for very long. The final 2 manga of the 5 batch were big hits, with the next series being a rather under-discussed but still beloved Shonen Jump sports series. Whistle, lasting 216 chapters and 24 volumes by Daisuke Higuchi. Whistle follows Sho Kazamatsuri, a boy with the dreams of joining Japan's J-League. He loves football with all his heart and has pushed himself throughout his life to get better at it despite his short stature. His journey is one fraught with difficulty, as despite getting into a school with a good team, Musashi no Mori, he spends his time sitting on benches as a substitute player. Noticing this and his lack of improvement, he decides to take things into his own hands, leaves the school to attend a lesser known one called Josui, and attempts to make his dreams come true from the ground up. Whistle is your tried and true sports manga. It does everything right, everything solidly, but maybe lacks the flash and notoriety of other series that surrounded it within Jump, which led to it not being as well known as its other Jump sports manga contemporaries. What it does have in spades though, maybe more so than any other sports manga I've read within Jump, is heart. The character of Sho is a constant force of inspiration for his fellow players and adversaries, and they can't help but gather around him. This is all because of his drive to get better at football, as well as his love for the game. His development is astounding, and without spoiling anything, it makes the ending hit very, very hard with its resounding admiration of football. The sidecast is also a lot of fun too, with the series mixing things up throughout its run with joint training camps and Sho moving up in the world of school football. What is especially relevant to the series is when it took place, before and during the 2002 FIFA World Cup, which Japan and South Korea co-hosted. This likely boosted the popularity of the series, as Japanese readers were being increasingly exposed to football as the country put a lot of effort into hosting the games. Throughout the manga, especially in 2002, you'll see little illustrations highlighting how long it will be until the World Cup starts and which stadiums the matches will be held in. An interesting topic the series visits also relates to the World Cup. There is a little bit of focus at one point on Japanese and Korean relations, which is a loaded topic. However, I feel Higuchi used the fact that the two countries banded together to host the World Cup as a springboard to at least broach this subject through their manga. It is likely done in a very idealistic way, but I think exposing children to the strained relations of the two countries and acknowledging there's tension there, as well as approaching it with a level of kindness, is something worth commending. This is a manga primarily aimed at younger children and on football. The discussion doesn't need to get super heavy, yet Whistle does go out of its way to be a bit more than just a football manga in how these characters treat and relate to each other. Their backgrounds are made to be important, and this all builds into a message about how football can connect all sorts of different people together. There are other parts of the series where it digs into ethnicity or on gender too, and how ultimately that doesn't matter when it comes to loving the game of football and participating in it. I quite like the character of Yuki Kojima, for instance, who is the club manager of the initial team, though goes on to start her own girls team later on and proves herself to be exceptionally skilled and knowledgeable on the sport, helping out all the boys immensely. None of this is groundbreaking on its own, but there's so many small moments that I would describe as soft or nurturing throughout Whistle. It takes its time to flesh out its cast and give them personal challenges to overcome. It also does all of this with such genuine feelings of camaraderie that I found quite refreshing. On the art front, I also found myself really enjoying the series. Higuchi is great at illustrating the path of the ball, how it's moved or passed around, and there's a lot of these wide sweeping shots of the field that help give you a greater sense of what's going on. It's always clear and robust. I never found myself confused at what was going on, or asked who was who either. It is for me one of the nicest manga I've read throughout the history of Jump series, and perhaps one of the most underrated manga in Jump Sports library. More people should definitely read this. Thankfully, it does have its fans and has remained quite well loved, with it getting a 39 episode long anime starting in 2002. Alongside this, it would also receive 2 video games, both released in 2003, with one being for the PlayStation and another for the Game Boy Advance. Over a decade after Whistle's conclusion, we would then see Higuchi return with Whistle W, a direct sequel manga which ran for 5 volumes. 2016 also saw Whistle go to the stage with the play Whistle Break Through the Wall that ran throughout the latter months of that year. While physical volumes may be pricey now, it is available in English and you can purchase this digitally if you'd like to read it in an official capacity. And now we reach the final manga of this batch of 5. Jump had began with bringing back a veteran author, and they would end this batch with one as well, seeing Yoshihiro Togashi return after Yu Yu Hakusho and Level E to do another full series by the name of Hunter x Hunter, which currently is still ongoing, though on hiatus with 410 available chapters as of writing. Building on this past series, Hunter x Hunter combines the strong battle shonen fundamentals we saw in Yu Yu Hakusho, its punchy art, its cast of likable characters, and wildly shifting tones with some of the bizarreness and eye for hyper detail that permeates Level E. It's more complicated than the former, yet more palatable than the latter, finding this sweet spot that's earned it a reputation as a shonen manga darling, and I am positively delighted that I'll be reading it alongside the creation of the History series. Much like One Piece, this is a series we'll be seeing throughout most of the future videos. While a lot of manga in Jump opt to build off of pre-established ideas even in a fantastical way, see One Piece building off of pirates or Naruto with ninjas, etc, Hunter x Hunter does things a tad differently. In its world, hunters aren't just those who hunt animals, though the first chapter uses tropes and ideas pertaining to that. They are in large part the greatest of humanity, those who are driven by an innate curiosity, passion, or desire to seek something, to the extent where they will become the most powerful and dangerous to chase their ideals. Our protagonist, Gon Freaks, wants to be one such hunter, to pursue a certain unknown, though it's not any mystical creature or ruins filled with vast riches. What he wants to hunt is another hunter, his father, Ging. I have heard the extremely comical explanation of Hunter x Hunter being about a son whose dad has left to buy cigarettes, only for that son to go out there on a journey to find out why cigarettes are so cool and worth leaving for. And while this is really funny, from the get-go, Gon's purity, enthusiasm, and tinges of loneliness really endear you to him and give the story this initial heart to it that justifies this journey you're about to go on. Along the way, in order to beat the hunter exam to become a hunter, he meets others who are also seeking something. Firstly, Leorio, a 19-year-old boy who looks to be in his 30s, initially abrasive, acting very casual and without a care, though secretly has a big heart, and Kurapika, an older boy who acts guarded and secretive, who juggles within him exceptional warmth as well as rage. These two become staunch allies and friends to Gon as the Hunter exam progresses, though on my reread I noticed that we only learn tiny snippets about them here. What's focused on mainly is them forging a relationship with Gon throughout the initial arc, with their cards still firmly glued to their chests. Like other characters who were introduced, I feel Togashi has no qualms with taking this slow. His character build-up isn't focused on or rushed. We instead get the seeds to future developments, something he perhaps felt he could do with him having a bit more leverage than usual within Jump. To divert for a while, throughout the last few videos I've mentioned the magazine's newest editor-in-chief Torishima and his approach to handling the magazine. Since it had fallen into a bit of a downward trajectory after many hit manga ending like Dragon Ball, Slam Dunk and Yu Yu Hakusho, Torishima took it upon himself to lift Jump out of its slump. One of the many things he did do in this regard was to push out a lot of the old blood, being as ruthless as he was with them as he would with most newbies. There are exceptions to this rule though, and I think Togashi is most certainly one of them. We also did see Toriyama come back to the magazine multiple times too post Dragon Ball's ending with whatever he wanted to do as well. So with this unfettered freedom, we get one of the most dense and indulgent stories I think Jump has ever seen. You can see this in all of Togashi's weird creatures he's thought up of, or through the mind games Tompa plays against his opponents. People often attribute the series to getting wordy later on, in the currently ongoing arc, but Hunter x Hunter has always been incredibly text heavy, and so has Togashi's previous work to an extent as well. Another aspect of the series that sticks out to me is Togashi's artwork. Having reached his limits throughout Yu Yu Hakusho serialization, and likely due to illness, we have this beautiful contrast of artwork that's minimal when it needs to be and incredibly detailed when Togashi wants to make a point. To me, it comes across as Togashi having realized the most efficient way of drawing for him, focusing instead on how he conveys information and saving energy to draw the things that necessitate mounds of detail. I hope this doesn't come across as if I'm saying his artwork is mechanical or efficient in this very objective way. I actually think it's quite beautiful how Togashi juggles the contrast, and some of his simpler pages really stick out to me. His eye for laying out a page is incredibly strong, and with so few lines he's able to convey so much and build an exceptionally rich world at times. Returning to the core of 1998's chapter contents, the Hunter exams were the series' initial focus. A smart decision, I think, as it naturally gives us insight into the world, what fills it, and what hunters are. Throughout the course of this arc, we learn that the organization is incredibly vast and powerful, worldwide pretty much, with immense authority over the goings-on across the globe. There are also all sorts of hunters, and many have to proctor the exam's various stages, like the Ruins Hunter Satotes, who proctors the first running-focused exam, or Menchi and Buhara, the gourmet hunters, focusing on food, who proctored the exam's second stage. Through these, we learn snippets about the world's food, its history, and information relating to the various characters, like about Gon's father Ying, or the group Kurapika's hunting, the Phantom Troop. For now, these are just snippets of information though, but a lot is set up in these first 40-ish chapters. Other core characters are also introduced here, like Netero, the chairman of the Hunter Association, Illumi, a certain assassin who is very relevant to Killua Zoldyck, and this disturbing clown man Hisoka. Those last two I'll touch on now since they're exceptionally important to the series, starting off with Killua. While he's introduced a little later than Kurapika and Leorio, he makes the fourth member of the main crew, and for the most part of the series it's Deuteragonist, being Gon's other half, and like the other two, what he's all about remains quite elusive, with him being an assassin from a certain family who's run away. Some of the coolest moments of the Hunter exams are connected to him, like him ripping the heart out of a prisoner during a later stage of the exam. His connection to Gon is what really makes him fascinating, with them both becoming fast friends, being the same age and also having nobody their age to grow up around. We get hints as well with Killua of how much he values this friendship, which is bundled up in his wishes to have a normal life, though this is something the series will build on in time. Hisoka then is a complex beast. At this stage, if Hunter Squad had a true antagonist, I suppose it would be Hisoka, though I'd prefer to say the series doesn't really have any to begin with. Everyone just has their own motivations, which makes them clash naturally, with Hisoka being, appropriate to his visage, a bit of a wild card or jester. Having failed the exam once before for killing a proctor, there's an air around Hisoka that he's playing a game, not having an especially strong motivation for becoming a hunter. He also kills indiscriminately, being the only one of the cast who exhibits much of anything supernatural, which adds to his mystique. His interactions with the core cast are also quite interesting, with him taking an interest in Gon in particular after he manages to land a blow on him during a later exam game, which sets up a rematch between the two for later on. Hisoka takes some elements found in shonen manga, the desire for battle or bloodlust, and perverts them. There's something dirty about how he approaches fights, a sinister feeling, and the fact that we don't know why he's even here getting his hunter license also further adds layers to him. This applies to the series' entire cast as well. They all feel as though they have their own motivators and drives. Togashi has just concocted a toy box full of characters and has set them free to interact with the world and achieve their goals. Dialing it back a bit, there's one moment in particular I want to talk about that transpired in 1998. After Gon steals Hisoka's badge but fails to give it back to him, initiating their later rematch, there's this air of frustration that surrounds Gon. He's upset that he's not strong enough, he feels inadequate, and there's time made for him to just be frustrated and cry. There's something about his earnest frustrations there that really resonated with me. They also highlight how much of a child he is, a recurring point that gets made throughout the series. Kurapika tenderly asks him what's wrong beforehand and notices Gon is off, so he relays something to him. Gon is the one who helped him and Leorio, and he is anything but inadequate. Despite trying my best, sometimes that feeling of inadequacy overtakes me, but thankfully I have people like Kurapika to back me up just like Gon. This moment made me reflect on that, and I find it deeply humanizes Gon and the relationship he has with Kurapika and Leorio. There's these little moments of care between them that get cemented as early as chapter 2 when they help each other on the boat. While Hunter x Hunter is crammed full of characters and concepts, the creatures, places, exams, odd tangents, at its core is this beautiful friendship between its cast. It's always on display, even in its darkest moments, and it will continue to shine as the series progresses, in particular when it enters its next arc following the Hunter exams, as the cast, now with the Hunter licenses, chase down their friend Killua. I've skirted around the specifics of the Hunter exam because in all honesty there's so much to say about Hunter x Hunter, from a contextual point in Jump's history, its art, character motivations, etc. The exam stages themselves range from very simple stuff to some clever little bits like Tricky Tower and the Majority Rules games, or the reverse tournament at the end. It's a great playground in a holistic sense for Togashi to begin this story in a familiar enough way, a tournament or exam, have characters that might resemble ones in his past series, or share traits with other shonen manga of the time, though there are cracks of something more on display, which we'll dive into in future history videos. We're not entirely done with Hunter x Hunter, as in record pace it actually managed to get an anime adaptation as part of the 1998 Jump Super Anime Tour, just like One Piece, only coming about a couple months after the series debuted, showing just how much confidence Jump had in Hunter x Hunter and how popular it was. The different mood it conveys, how it's animated, and voice actor choices also make this 25-minute pilot worth watching if you're a fan of the series. It's no wonder shortly after it'll also receive a full anime adaptation, though I'll save that for next time, and for now we'll move on to a special segment. It's Hiatus Watch. Welcome to Hiatus Watch, a mini segment tied to Hunter x Hunter which will be increasingly relevant as we run through Jump's history. While the series is synonymous with Togashi taking hiatuses, from its inception there were weeks here and there with no chapter within Jump. Even in 1988 that's the case, with 3 issues not having a Hunter x Hunter chapter. This, all things considered, is pretty good as a Hunter x Hunter fan. And that's all for this Hiatus Watch segment. I'll see you next time with more Hunter x Hunter and more hiatus coverage in the 1999 video.
An all-new Shaman King. A new snowboarding shaman blows on the scene. But is he an ally?
Good luck in the shaman tournament.
Or is it all a snow job?
He's hanging out with hunter spirits.
That kid is a traitor. You'll pay for that!
Directly after this 5-batch, Jump would continue to hit home runs, with Shaman King by Hiroyuki Takei running for 285 chapters and 32 volumes. Shaman King is another monumental series for Jump and shonen manga as a whole, often regarded as being one of the very best. And having read through it for this video, I completely see why. I was even tempted to maybe cover it in chunks like some of the other series I do that for, but I have a lot on my plate already. Shaman King follows Yo Asakura, a laid-back kid and shaman who wants nothing better than for everyone to get along, living or dead. It's a series that exhibits a lot of elements you'll be familiar with if you read shonen manga. It has the protagonist that turns enemies into allies, it has a power system that sees its cast grow and evolve, and a whole host of exam/tournament arcs. Alongside all of this, Shaman King feels pretty different. One of the reasons why is its focus on shamanism and beyond, of all the different faiths and beliefs from across the world, especially pertaining to how we think about and handle our deceased. Earlier on, this manifests in episodic chapters where Yo embodies different spirits to help him do different tasks, while helping them pass on, with his primary spirit partner being a Midamaru, an ancient samurai. Over time, the series transitions into being more battle-focused as other shamans track Yo down, like Ren, revealing that Yo is a part of a years-long tradition called the Shaman Fight, a tournament to crown the next Shaman King. This event puts the series into hyperdrive and is one of the most fun exam cross-tournament style arcs in any shonen manga I've read. In large part, this is because we get to meet so many different characters who believe and embody different things. Each has a different set of beliefs, wants to become the Shaman King for different reasons, and treats ghosts or spirits in different ways. One of my favourite characters, just as an example, is Hororo, an Ainu shaman who fights with a Koropoku named Kororo, who in Ainu folklore are a race of miniature people who live in hiding under butterbur leaves. Through this character, Takei manages to showcase a piece of their culture, talk about preserving nature, convey a little bit about Ainu customs, and how all of these elements intersect. He attempts to do so for many of the characters, and it's this holistic approach to representing the people of the world and their beliefs that makes Shaman King a really approachable series for everyone. You might wonder how X culture might be represented, and while I'm sure some aren't shown perfectly, the fact that this was even attempted and how it meshes with Shaman King's grander ideas is fantastic. So many shonen series tackle the idea of conflict and unity or friendship, but there's an effort here to show how that might be possible on a grand worldwide scale as Yo gradually befriends other shamans. He is also another core facet that sets Shaman King apart from other big shonen titles. Yo Asakura is fundamentally different as a protagonist. He's kind and will fight for what's right, but at his core he's relaxed. His main goal is to enjoy life and be happy, with no strong ambition to do much of anything. He's a rather reactive protagonist, in fact, letting things wash over him and taking life as it comes, matching its ebbs and flows, often remarking that things will just work out. In a word, he's refreshing. He's not a loud character who's running off on some grand goal, but one very down to earth and relatable. How Shaman King even interacts with some shonen ideas like power levels is also something I find quite interesting, showing them to us to show us how futile the situation is, but Yo's attitude to them is always a lax who cares, things will just take their course. Things also get pretty fatalistic as the series goes on, but the series always retains this love for humanity and a belief that we can always find common ground and get along, all of which is embodied within Yo. Shaman King is a very ambitious story, which I think by the end does lead to it getting somewhat squashed under its own weight, something you can kind of tell based on its prolonged and odd final chunk of chapters that build up into a massive anticlimax. By this point though, I felt I'd already internalized a lot of the ideas Takei wanted to convey, and it was always about the journey and the process anyway. Beyond the fights, which granted are really cool, there's a calmness that pervades the series, with it having quite a lot of downtime. One of my favourite instances is when two characters, Manta and Ryu, are driving around going to Izumo, and Ryu relays how places like service stations along the highways are his happy place. He can find comfort and beauty, community even in these places. So many times in Shaman King do I feel like instead of the series telling me to try my best or find friends, it asks the questions, what makes you happy, where makes you happy, and what will fulfill you. It's contemplative along with being a regular battle shonen, and no other series has the exact same rhythm it has. I kept things kind of loose while explaining my thoughts on its general plot here, and I think people who have read the series will get what I'm saying, but for those who haven't, I really think you should give Shaman King a shot. In a general sense, Shaman King stands out in other ways as well, especially in its artwork, with its original run having some of my favourite art in Jump. Takei's style exudes personality, with him being a master of using all sorts of shapes to express his characters. His designs have this more exaggerated feel to them, much like last year's One Piece. What this has led to is art which is timeless, that could debut today and still feel very new visually. I can also praise Takei on other artistic fronts. His backgrounds are detailed and gorgeous, blending seamlessly with his characters. How pages are panelled and structured is always clear, with room being made for bigger moments and spreads. The colour pages are also some of the best I've ever seen in Jump. They're always brimming with charm and vibrancy. A special mention also goes out to all the mecha-inspired designs Takei used, with the X-Laws having some sick stuff, but there's also some subtler things like Tao En's Dadao Wang looking like the Turn A Gundam, which would have been airing throughout Shaman King's release.
Turn A Gundam.
In its totality, when we bring together Shaman King's story, focus on different cultures and beliefs, artwork and characters, something truly special emerges. For someone who has been such a big fan of shonen manga for a really long time, this was a real treat reading it. Shaman King would of course live on beyond its original run, with there being a whole host of conversation and rumours following its ending, with a lot of people saying it got cancelled. From my knowledge though, that doesn't really seem to be the case. It was one of the magazine's top dogs, and while it wouldn't quite match up with things like One Piece, it being cancelled so close to its conclusion makes no real sense. It also got a color page for its final issue, something Jump give to beloved series when they conclude. Following this, Shaman King would even get republished into Kanzenban editions featuring a brand new ending and revisions. Takei would even serialize a manga in Weekly Shonen Jump again, albeit briefly, with Jumbo. Later on, he would go on to work with Stan Lee on Ultimo for Jump Square, and some of Shaman King's sequel series would even originate from Jump X, a monthly Young Jump spin-off. In modern times, Shaman King would be bought and transferred to Kodansha, where Takei would create even more sequels. I think this change in publisher, paired with the original abrupt ending, is likely what caused all of this confusion and speculation over the series' supposed cancellation. If you'd like a succinct video going over all of this, including another common Shaman King rumor, I'd like to recommend one by Patch Cafe titled The Story of Shaman King Volume 32's Cancellation. All of this honestly is a bit of a headache and somewhat mars a lot of discussion surrounding Shaman King in some spaces, as people hyper-focus on it being cancelled or its rushed ending, and miss the forest for the trees. Equally as befuddling and headache-inducing, but in a more positive sense, is the amount of Shaman King sequels or supplemental media. You have Shaman King Zero, Flowers, The Superstar, countless little side stories or one-shots bundled in with the volume releases, Shaman King Red Crimson, Marcos, Faust, all side stories done by Jet Kusamura. There are also countless video games, a trading card game, novels, and 2 different anime, the 2001 series with an anime original ending by Studio Zebek lasting 64 episodes, and the more recent 54 episode long anime from 2021 by Studio Bridge. There is so much Shaman King to read or watch, and it's indicative of how beloved the series is by its own author and by fans. And if all of those great series weren't enough, 1998 would also see Akira Toriyama return again with another short series in Kajika, lasting 12 chapters and fitting neatly into a single volume. We saw Toriyama last year with some short series, but where Kawa was a lot cuter and sillier, maybe feeling more in line with some of Toriyama's one-shots or Dr. Slump, I feel fans of Dragon Ball will greatly enjoy this short offering in Kajika. The story follows the titular character who is on a quest to reclaim his human form after accidentally killing a fox. To do so, he must save the lives of 1,000 living beings, and he only needs to save 10 more to turn back for good. Toriyama has a lot of fun with this premise, juggling jokes, a variety of quirky characters, and some very fun battle scenes. It's a very solid short story, which I'm surprised has never seen an official English localization, despite other countries having one. If you're a fan of Toriyama and haven't read this, then I highly recommend seeking it out. It is a blast. Yu-Gi-Oh! Would kick off the year by fully embracing duel monsters. Somewhat perfectly, the events of Duelist Kingdom begin in issue 1 of 1998, so for now, we'll have to say goodbye to some of the incidental episodic shadow games that filled prior chapters. That being said, duel monsters at this point in time is by no means concrete, and if you're a fan of the Gallop anime, you'll know that they don't exactly follow the rules perfectly most of the time. Seeing duel monsters gradually form throughout this arc and the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga is perhaps an overlooked treat if you're familiar with the card game and anime. I've talked at length in past videos about how fun it is to see Takahashi come up with all these cool games, but here he really has to hunker down and build on a specific idea. Some things end up working really well and others don't, but getting to be along for the ride as he undergoes this creative process is a ton of fun. Intertwined with this is the introduction of new characters. The usual episodic, evil-looking children that filled Yu-Gi-Oh! Beforehand have now been adapted into duelists. Their character traits now aren't just manifested in the types of games they play, but through the individual cards they use that make up their decks. The meek Poindexter Weevil Underwood or Insecta Haga uses small insect cards, augmenting them with spells to overpower his opponents in moves that seem tactical, though they're really no different from Joey slapping an equip spell on Flame Swordsman. All sorts of duelists are introduced throughout this arc to help flesh out the world of duel monsters, but before I touch on more, we have to talk about the iconic setup of this arc. Maximilian Pegasus, the president of Industrial Illusions and creator of Duel Monsters, as well as the oldest looking 24-year-old ever, gets in touch with Yugi via cassette tape. Here he duels Yugi through the cassette, which is peak Yu-Gi-Oh! The absurdism of someone fighting, someone who has pre-recorded all of their lines and moves, and the nods to the supernatural or horror elements surrounding this feel delightfully appropriate. As a little aside here, I also find it kind of interesting that my first thought when reading these chapters were, oh, this reminds me of The Ring, the 1998 movie, which this chapter would have predated by a month or so. Granted, The Ring had been a book and film prior in 1995 too. Connecting this to past videos, I did bring up before how Yu-Gi-Oh! Often acted as a bit of a time capsule, as we got to see the toys or games that were popular at the time. In a similar vein, Japan's growing fascination with digital horror is represented through this duel. Overall, it's a really engaging and interesting setup that bridges the gap between older Game of the Week style Yu-Gi-Oh! And the card game focused Duelist Kingdom. Yugi's grandpa also gets absorbed into the TV, with the only way of saving him being to go to Pegasus's fancy island to participate in this grand tournament. What comes next is mostly the Yu-Gi-Oh! You likely know and love. Some of its most iconic moments, meeting duelists like Weevil, Rex Raptor, or My Valentine, a name that took me a shocking amount of time to realize was a very simple pun. Yugi losing his Exodia to Weevil on the ship and Joey jumping after it happens here too, and as always the friendship between these two and their bond shines throughout this year. Joey also gets some extra motivation through us learning about his sister Serenity and her needing money for surgery. It's a little tacked on at the beginning, but it serves to give him a bit more autonomy and reasoning to grow. A core part of his character going forward is him being an underdog. Not being nearly as good at games as Yugi, but wanting to stand by his side with him as his equal. While he still relies on Yugi here and there, him stepping out of Yugi's shadow and growing to become a kinder and more capable person on his own terms is what originally made him my favourite character as a kid. That and his deck is an absolute mess, filled with all sorts of quickie cards he just likes or thinks are strong. He's the embodiment of childhood playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, facing insurmountable odds but having just enough of a brain and some luck through cards like Time Wizard to pull through. On the subject of Playground Yu-Gi-Oh!, let's talk about the game a bit more here. Duelist Kingdom sees the series take on some extra rules like the field power bonuses, which these elements add some extra more video game-like aspects to the card game. Because of these, there's an extra layer of narrative to the game that eschews ironclad rules in favor of simple logic. A water monster will have the edge over a fire one, or a flying monster might be hard to hit versus a grounded one. This is all baked into the game of Duel Monsters initially, and is an extension of how Takahashi wrote prior games, especially the ones focused on role-playing elements. In the Gallop anime, you'll see many people remark about the screw the rules moments and how they aren't playing the game properly, but the anime is actually doing its best not only to be faithful to its source material, but also adapt the manga's contents to the newly solidified card game rules. It honestly must have been really hard to balance those things. I also think if you lost these moments, it would erase a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh's identity at this stage. It's fun to see Yugi pull out crazy moves that make some kind of logical sense. The whole I target the moon,
Now, Stone Soldier, destroy the moon!
or the entire setup with Castle of Dark Illusions are fun, iconic moments and examples of this. They aren't something that could ever happen within the physical card game, they're way too complicated, too specific and finicky, but here in manga form they're executed with all the flair of a JoJo stand battle, someone's masterful gambit finally paying off. At their core is imagination, something Takahashi doesn't shy away from depicting. I think what drew me to the series initially and its card game is this silly, magical, and imaginative side of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not the idea of boxing out your opponents with infinite negations or one-turn killing them, but the interactions between your cards and your opponents, the narrative that builds between two duelists as they fight. While the core rules of the game wouldn't be solidified throughout this arc, the intent and emotion behind duels and duelists was. I could honestly yap on and on about Duelist Kingdom and all the different duels and characters that take place within, but the general gist is Yugi and co explore the island over the course of 2 days, fight a myriad of duelists, and manage to get enough starships to enter Pegasus's castle to be one of the 4 finalists, the other 2 aside from Yuki and Joey being My Valentine and Bandit Keith. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface though, as mixed in with this whole tournament is Pegasus trying to take over the Kaiba Corporation. As for a part of this arc, Kaiba remains in a coma after a past defeat to Yugi. They've also captured his brother Mokuba, giving him motive to get to the island and save him. He eventually does wake up and makes his way to the island, though filled with a new drive. There's a lot of iconic Kaiba moments here too, including him blocking the hammer of a gun with the card Gyakuten no Megami, or Goddess of Reversal. He's truly the wildcard of the arc, a third party to complicate things and act as an extra roadblock, throwing Joey off in their duel and sparking a new rivalry between them, and later on we get the famous showdown outside of Pegasus's castle to end the year, a battle between Yugi and Kaiba. This is the duel where Kaiba threatens to commit suicide if Yugi wins, and despite this being the most pathetic shit ever, Kaiba still remains one of the coolest characters in fiction. It's hard to fully hate him for this, as his motivations are somewhat altruistic. He wants to save Mokuba no matter what, demonstrating he has grown as a character even if he still is a massive ass. This also provides us an interesting internal dilemma for Yugi. The Pharaoh or Yami is more than happy to let this transpire. Winning and protecting Yugi's grandpa is something he pushes for, but inside, the other him, the true Yugi, stops this from happening. This moment I feel is such a great obstacle for Yugi, a bump in his development, as so far throughout this arc he's been at the top of his game, beating other duelists left and right. Once again though, a core issue Yugi needs to overcome is an internal one. It brings the core concept of Yugi having this other self to the forefront and returns Yugi's agency back to him, as now he's somewhat wary of himself, something 1999's chapters would have to tackle. Another aspect of this I really like is how Takahashi brings up the purpose of games. Kaiba asserting that games have always revolved around conflict. It's a you versus them situation. There must always be a winner and a loser. Yuki's friends, having seen him play countless games over the course of the series, disagree with him though and back Yuki up. Taya even pushing the idea that playing games is all about self-improvement, doing your best no matter what and not giving up, having the courage to keep on living and trying. While Yami Yugi may have done most of the dueling, many of the choices Yugi made were out of pure kindness. He's always looking out for others and helping them, including Mai earlier on in this arc, which helps him in the end get into Pegasus's castle. Joey's pep talk focusing on what Yugi himself wants is also really lovely. These two are constantly there for each other and have each other's backs in their darkest moments. It all leads to a really nice sentiment about what games should embody and how pride can obscure the real important things from you. And that's where Yu-Gi-Oh! Ends for this video, with our gang at the foot of Pegasus's castle, ready to end this tournament and rescue their loved ones. Even though the year had been especially focused on the card game of Duel Monsters, the official card game we know now as the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG or TCG hadn't manifested at all this year. Instead, we got the Bandai official card game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Set to release alongside the original Toei anime series, which we talked about in prior videos. This version had different rules and very different looking cards, with it even having character cards too, with sets releasing throughout 1998 up until January of 1999, where Konami would have exclusive rights to produce any future card game product. Alongside these initial cards are Yu-Gi-Oh's first video games, with Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Capsule Breed and Battle being released in 1998 for the PS1 and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters for the Game Boy coming out in the same year. Both were developed by Konami and actually had promo Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards of their own included that weren't from Bandai's version or part of the OCG that would come to form in 1999. You can see just from this how popular the series was and how much of a scramble there was to merchandise Yu-Gi-Oh!, likely due to the popularity of other card games at the time and a certain monster-filled franchise it would go on to rival. After a long run starting in the 80s, veteran author Makoto Niwana would serialize their final series in Jump, Base Boys, lasting 18 chapters and 2 volumes. This would be your fairly typical baseball manga, seeing its protagonist Sugiura join Takatsu High's baseball team only to find it's been overrun with delinquents, though with the help of another prospective player, Zenosuke, an ex-Kendo Club member, they whip the team back into shape. Nuano has tried a variety of things within Jump, finding relative success with sports and martial arts titles. Unfortunately, I feel his luck majorly ran out this year, with Toroshima's push to fill the magazine with new blood and the advent of rookies. The cover following Base Boy's debut would even be a rookies cover too, signaling a bit of a death knell for this series. While it's not unheard of for the magazine to serialize 2 baseball series at once or even 2 similar series, the fact that these were both released so close to each other and also both heavily featuring delinquents really has me scratching my head wondering why Nuano and editors went through with this. This isn't to say Base Boys is bad either. Nuano's art is as charming as ever, and he made an attempt to minimize jokes and focus on the baseball itself, though still had some more outlandish characters befitting his style. Base Boys just couldn't measure up to the many other hits of 1998 though, which led it to being Nuano's final manga in the magazine. To fill some space after Kajika's brief serialization, Jump would swap in Hiroshi Gamo, the creator of Lucky Man, to do another detective manga, Boku wa Shonen Tantei Dan, which would last 20 chapters and 2 volumes. Unlike the other ventures into the detective mystery genre, Boku wa Shonen Tantei Dan would parody those popular detective manga at the time and be predominantly comedic, seeing its protagonist Dan fill his head with vinegar and use a briefcase filled with 7 special tools which would change each chapter to solve wacky cases. Throughout the manga, Dan would battle the Nostradamla, a villain who plots to destroy humanity, fight against phantom thieves, and do various other bizarre things, with the series throwing reams and reams of text at readers, juggling mystery elements and comedy beats. It would, however, not last long and would end Jump's stint at trying mystery manga for quite some time. The final new series of the year would debut in the final issue of the year, being Rising Impact by Nakaba Suzuki, lasting 146 chapters and 17 volumes. This is a name you might actually be familiar with, as the author would gain popularity for the Weekly Shonen magazine title The 7 Deadly Sins, with its sequel 4 Nights of the Apocalypse still ongoing. Nakaba has been all around the big shonen magazines, having stints in all 4 major magazines like Weekly Shonen Sunday, Weekly Shonen Magazine, Weekly Shonen Champion, though he began his career with Jump, with his first serialization being from this year. This manga would also mark the return of golf to the magazine, being absent for many years, seeing its protagonist, the young Gawain, Nanaomi, be exposed to the sport for the first time. He then leaves his rural mountain home to be the person who can hit the balls the furthest, a very childish goal, though soon finds he genuinely loves the sport and wants to get better. A part of why he comes to love golf is the various characters he meets along the way, like his initial mentor Kiria, and his long-term rival Lancelot, who is one of the prettiest characters to have ever graced Shonen Jump and is effortlessly cool. Initially acting above Gawain, but establishing a strong friendship with him as the story progresses. Other characters make big impressions too, as Gawain meets them through the Camelot Academy, a prestigious golfing school with 3 branches, one in Japan, one in the US, and one in England. This is relevant as its central arc, the Camelot Cup, involves all 3 schools coming together to see which one comes out on top. While Rising Impact may not be the most realistic portrayal of golf, it's an especially fun one with how Nakaba set everything up. His characters are charming, with Gawain being this great example of a younger protagonist who's cute and silly, with his age often leading to interesting developments. Frustration builds in him over quite simple things, though he can also bounce back and learn quite quickly. To put it simply, he's childish, but in an endearing way that serves his character well. He's honestly one of my favourite Jump protagonists too, being in this category of cool little guys, with Gon from Hunter x Hunter there too. Now, with all this praise and the mention of arcs deeper into the series, you might be surprised by this next bit of info. Rising Impact was actually once cancelled. It hit its 15th chapter and left the magazine in early 1999 in issue 16, for there to be such a huge fan outcry that editorial decided to bring this back by issue 27 of 1999. I've neglected to mention this, but this has happened rarely over the last decade, with I think Outer Zone and Yamashita Taro-kun also being revived series like Rising Impact. So when people do ask for an ACT series to return, while it's very unlikely to happen, there is a precedent for it has happened in the past. Sadly, for the purposes of anyone who would like to read the series, only the portion up to its cancellation has been translated, though recently we have obtained another way to view the series. 2024 would see Rising Impact get an anime 25 years after its initial release, covering the beginning and all of the Camelot Cup in 26 episodes. This, from my knowledge, was quite poorly advertised and underwatched, but it's one of my favourite recent anime, which has made me a huge fan of the series. What I have read of the manga too, I feel the anime paces things a little better and does a great job at showing off all the golf in motion. Rising Impact is such a rich series in the context of Jump, from its author who hopped around all the different major weekly shonen magazines, to its cancellation and revival, and its anime that came out 25 years after its release. I hope someday it does get a full translation or a final season of anime to wrap things up. I have heard it was essentially cancelled a second time, with it wrapping things up very quickly, but I still adore its characters, and from what I've seen, this is one of the best Shonen Jump sports titles I've read, something I've said like 3 times in this single video. 1998 was an insanely stacked year for a good sports manga. To close out 1998, the final manga we'll be discussing is JoJo Part 5 Golden Wind, where last time we defected from the boss, Fugo left the crew, and we're off to find more clues about who our main villain is in Sardinia. Notorious B.I.G. is the first arc of the year, seeing Trish get some extra development as we face one of JoJo's most terrifying stands, while completely airborne. The concept of Kane and Notorious B.I.G. is really interesting. This autonomous stand that only works when the user dies, but pursues its targets endlessly or anything that moves. I'm not the biggest fan of the arc overall, but it's filled with excellent illustrations from Araki really leaning into this tense horror vibe, and Trish realizing she has Spice Girl, which is a really neat moment. What stands out to me a lot from this year's chapters is how much focus the boss gets, with us finally learning more about him. The fact that we don't know much about him before this, how he schemes and sticks to the shadows, is also part of the point with Diavolo being freakishly secretive, only trusting himself, which is reinforced with his closest ally being his own split personality. There is absolutely an element of misanthropy to Diavolo, this want or need to not have any connection to humanity. This distancing he does between him and everyone else is proof of this. Secrecy clouds him to the point where, apart from not wanting to be perceived or acknowledged, we know very little about him. This is so against what it means to be human. To be human is to be known by others, to be loved, cared for, hated in some situations. Alongside this is legacy and how we connect to each other as friends but also family, an idea that's really important to JoJo. The entire series is a celebration of life and this one family, unified across time. So having a villain that wants to erase who they are, their family and their ties to them is perfect. It builds on the solitary nature of prior villain Yoshikage Kira, but goes even further. This makes Diavolo a lot more abstract since we know less about him, but with enough thought I find him quite compelling. Following this logic, there's some interesting mirroring to be had with Giorno, a child who's been divorced from their family in the Joestars, his mother and also Dio, though not really by his choice, with them eventually finding a new family through Passione. When thinking of Diavolo, there's this feeling as if I'm grasping in the dark for motive. Why is he like this? Was there a lack of love in his childhood that compelled him to become this way, to erase his very being and any mistake he might have made? But because of the lack of info, his actions colour him as a complete monster, and appropriately, the series accompanies this with allusions to Satan. Despite this and the bloody path he set himself on, he did fall in love at one point though and had Trish. There's some human qualities to him, which begs the question, is this some kind of possession by the devil? This vagueness that surrounds his character could be the result of a lack of time to flesh him out, or similarly to Fugo's fate, maybe the original intent was for his past to be incredibly dark and not something Araki wished to illustrate at the time. The uncertainty that surrounds him is something I've come to really appreciate, and with how prone he is to erasing his past and any semblance of his being, it's fitting we don't have a clear picture of him. We aren't supposed to fully understand somebody who has divorced themselves from humanity. It is, however, a lot of fun to see him be more involved in the story through Doppio, a delightfully unhinged character who contrasts with Diavolo being more lighthearted for the most part. His fight with Risotto Nero, the final member of La Squadra, is a highlight of JoJo, period. It's a shame we never get to see much of Risotto, as he's a really neat character with a cracked stand that utilizes the iron in people's bodies to do all sorts of things like cloak himself, rendering him invisible, and, spawn razor blades and scissors in people's throats. Casual, totally not OP stand stuff. The fight here is bloody and has some of Araki's best gore scenes, an element I appreciate a lot about JoJo. Nothing really captures how fun and unnerving its stand fights involving body horror can be, with this being the pinnacle of that for me. It does sadly end in Risotto's defeat, however, as Diavolo manages to use Giorno and Ko's presence to effectively have them deal with Risotto, and in the ensuing chaos, a sneak attack by the boss ends with Abbacchio's death. I really like his final scene though, where he gets to converse with his partner as he moves on, and this spread of Abbacchio in the sky is one of my favourite pieces of artwork Araki has ever drawn. Everything isn't all in vain though, as Abbacchio does manage to convey one last vital clue to the crew on the boss's identity, and with a conveniently timed message from an unknown source, we're prompted to the Colosseum in Rome. Before we get there though, we do face off against Cioccolata and Secco, the stand users of Green Day and Oasis. When I mentioned Diavolo divorcing himself from humanity, I feel these characters also exemplify this and build on this idea as well. Throughout the part, it discusses the humanity of its cast, with us dealing with various criminals and gangsters. At what point do these characters lose their humanity or innate goodness? This is interlinked with the relationships the different gangsters have with each other, like our core cast, but plenty of enemies are paired up too. We see the bonds between them like Prosciutto and Pesci, Sobe and Gelato, or Tiziano and Squalo. Cioccolata and Secco, on the other hand, take this idea and really pervert it, having a more nefarious and repugnant bond. There's a vileness to their backstory to accompany this, and their stands reflect this repugnancy too, with Green Day being a mold that just melts through people, and Secco's Oasis being another suit-like stand that lets him swim through the ground like mud. These two feel disgusting, pure villains with no charisma, the lowest of the low, so it's fitting that we get the 7-page Muda here, reserved for one of the biggest pieces of shit JoJo has ever featured. I'm sure this was delightful to read weekly in 1998, just 7 straight pages of Giorno punching the shit out of a bad guy. All roads then converge to the Colosseum, which include our gang as well as Diavolo disguised as Doppio, where we meet a friendly face, Jean-Pierre Eiffel. Polnareff, now supporting a new look coupled with a wheelchair. I've always found this a bit of an odd and abrupt inclusion, but I like how Araki is interlinked past parts in a way I would have never expected. Part 5 gets really weird here with all the different things going on, Polnareff's reintroduction, Bruno gradually decaying, Diavolo swapping between personalities, and the stand arrow coming back, becoming a central plot point for our final act. We've all seen what happens when it pierces someone and grants them a stand, but what happens when a stand arrow pierces the stand itself? The Requiem begins to play at the end of 1998, but fittingly, the year closes with all remaining characters falling into a deep slumber. Outside of new series, we actually have a bit more to talk about regarding 1998, as this marks Weekly Shonen Jump's 30th anniversary. We have in fact now covered 30 years of magazine history, which is over half of its entire run. To celebrate, the magazine actually changed its cover somewhat, giving the Weekly Shonen Jump typography a fresh coat of paint. This is the first time it's done so since the beginning of 1984, and ever since then we've actually kept this style of type. You can see it on the newest issues, which you can buy today. Along with this was an attempt to experiment with the covers more, which resulted in probably the worst year for Jump covers I can think of. They look really dull, often being zoomed in shots of characters' faces. Perhaps this was done to be more economical, though it led to covers like issue 1 of 1998 with Garo's debut, which looks horrible. There's some nice ones for sure, but poor covers plague the year and are accompanied with what I feel is way more text than they'd normally have. I'm being a bit of a negative Nancy though, and Jump did do a few other things to celebrate the 30th anniversary, like the Jump Super Anime Tour, which gave us the OVA pilot pilots for One Piece and Hunter x Hunter I mentioned earlier. We also got a 30th anniversary art book covering some of the most popular series Jump had serialized from 1968 up until 1998. Perhaps there were other things the magazine did to celebrate the year too. In retrospect, it could be that the big 5 batch featuring Rookies, Whistle and Hunter x Hunter was bundled together to celebrate the year by doing something big that could potentially change the magazine, and well, they did succeed with that. Now that we've run through everything from 1998, let's talk about how the magazine was doing at the beginning and end of the year. Having just debuted, One Piece would take the magazine by storm, cementing itself as a key player by the turn of the year as we closed out on Orange Town. Rurouni Kenshin would also be an ongoing hit at the time, gradually heading for its conclusion. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Hoshin Engi were going strong, being another 2 recent-ish hits for the magazine. For Legacy series, JoJo was still going strong in Part 5, Hallelujah 2 Boy was still running with its delinquent shenanigans, as well as Hell Teacher Nube. Another hit from last year, Eyes, would be the core romance series at this time. For comedy, we had the classic Kochikame alongside the new hit Sekimatsu Leader Den Takeshi and Ten. Other miscellaneous popular series also ran at this time, like the horse racing series Midori Makibao, animal-focused mystery battle series Wild Harp, and Majima, a martial arts series, as well as Meriote Goto Seijiro, the student council-focused drama series. For some other important series that wouldn't stay in Jump for long, Bastard was intermittently serializing at this time within Jump, and Akira Toriyama's short series Kawa was also present during this transition from 1997 into 1998. A handful of manga then remain, being Cool Rental Bodyguard, Kirin the Last Unicorn, and the newly debuted Garo, none of which would find much success. But that's a very small list of dud series which left Jump in a really strong position, I feel. The roster here is stacked full of well-loved titles, and overall I think editorial and editor-in-chief Torishima did a good job at picking the magazine back up after its slump post-1995. But 1998 would see further improvements with a number of series ending. Notably, Kawa would end its short run, and the underperforming Kirin the Last Unicorn, Cool Rental Bodyguard, and Garo would end too. For larger manga, Majima-kun would end its 3-year-long run, as would Midori Makibao and Wild Harp at the tail end of the year. In their place, we would see the return of Yoshihiro Togashi with Hunter x Hunter, a premium battle shonen adventure series which still appears in the magazine to this day. Sports manga would finally make their grand return too, with us getting hits with Rookies, Whistle, and Rising Impact, being baseball, football, and golf respectively. The highly popular battle shonen Shaman King would also debut within the year too, and with it I feel we're starting to assemble a lot of pieces that went on to define Shonen Jump's Western image, of a magazine dominated by battle shonen, something that would only become more solidified next year. And speaking of next year, due to the new batch overlapping between 1998 and 1999, a couple of other series I haven't mentioned belong in this roster. The not so successful Shinkaigyo and Hikaru no Go, a really important and cool manga that unfortunately we'll have to discuss in depth next time. The only other manga to debut in 1998 that's in this roster is Tantei Dan, the detective gag manga by Lucky Man creator Hiroshi Gamo, which wouldn't last super long. Looking at what we have here by the start of 1999, yet again, Shonen Jump has one-upped itself from the prior year, featuring a slate of manga that are exceptionally iconic, many of which would become some of your favorites if you're an old school fan or grew up reading the American Shonen Jump issues throughout the 2000s. Moving forward, that's the era we're actually stepping into, the new millennium, which is full of nostalgia for many, with most of the big hits being things you can read, which are also very well loved. Of course, there's all sorts of smaller series which don't get discussed much too, which I will be looking forward to covering next time as we delve into Shonen Jump in 1999. But for now, I have to close out this video as it's been one of the longest I've ever made. 1998 was a huge year for Jump. So much happened, so many new manga debuted, and it also took me a long time to read and research everything, as well as try to get my feelings out on numerous important works, which I want to share and represent in the best way I can, since I want people to read these series. This goes beyond just the popular stuff too. Engaging people in Jump, the big stuff, the hidden gems so to speak, and even the Axe manga with no full translations is something I want to do. I want to spark discussion and curiosity behind the magazine and spread why I love it. to show that it's so much more than people make it out to be. I'm really grateful for all the support I receive from people who watch these videos. The genuine enthusiasm from people about when the next one will come out always gets me excited, and I'll keep doing my best to create these as quickly as I can while retaining the same level of quality and detail, though sometimes it might take a while because there's a lot to talk about in any given year, 1999 being another jam-packed year with Naruto, Hikaru no Go, Prince of Tennis, etc. There's a lot to read, but also a lot to look forward to, so I hope to see you there. In the meantime, if this is your first Jump History video, I have done a video for every single year leading up to this. The initial video is not as polished, but should still be interesting if you're a fan of older manga. The channel is also home to a whole host of other videos, many of which are on Shonen Jump and some not. There's a lot on cancelled manga throughout my X-Files series, where I review and analyse things that never got their full chance to shine. In general, if you like manga or Shonen Jump, I feel they're worth a watch, and if you do like them, liking the videos, sharing them, and subscribing helps me out a lot. What also helps immensely is the Patreon, which without, I'm not sure I could dedicate big chunks of my life to reading and looking into Shonen Jump as much as I do. So if you'd like to support the future of these Jump History videos, please head on over and support me there if you can. It will also go on to provide me with money to buy throat lozenges, because this recording is currently over 1 hour and 40 minutes, and I'm getting a bit lightheaded too. If you do support me there, there's some cool bonus videos for you to watch. You'll also get access to polls, which decide some future videos on which cancelled manga I cover. So if there's a cancelled manga from Jump that's been translated that you'd like to hear me talk more about, you can if you suggest stuff through the monthly X-File polls and suggestions. Nothing is tier gated either. You can see all the extra stuff for as little as $1 a month, and you'll be thanked in the credits of my videos, with the only difference being that anyone who pledges $3 or more gets an extra little doodle beside their name in the credits too, like all of these cool people. Thank you, Trinity, Jade, Kazukugairu, Circle Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Faco, Yellowtail, Lace Sloggett, Chris P. Bacon, Cho Henshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Yuzakura Psycho, Wurzel, Violent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, Crash, 41IZ, Hong, Jamie Reynolds, Manu, Poke Emblem, James Miller, Jopa Monkey, Just a Virus, Star Sphinx, PK Broly, Fenrir Black, Elijah Espinoza, Neo Humanoid, Mark Nielsen, Electropirate, Jay Vasso, Three Frogs in a Trenchcoat, Sir Flash, Gay Shark, Slimy Okra, Giddista, Wavy Sky, TG Talks Manga, John Jerry 722, Andrew, Xenomat, Missile, Tara Elizabeth, Stratomega 13, Dennis Tambek, Jubei, Lise, Frog Dude, Back on Earth, Justin Maikage, Papa Aeon, Hilltop, Vako Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, John Sanford, Color, Jaime, Strawberry Proshone, Vaz, Palette, Ruiner, Juice, Kurumi Nox, Eric Gorski, Miss the Shira, Grizz Exploder, Dextora, Eni Oshowo, Cheese, Emmy, Benjamin, Tenmaku Lover, Taifumi Studios, Ignate, Iliades, Gyrus, VHS Enthusiast, Kanojo, King Snacks, Sidrune, Daniel, and Melons. Thank you all so much for being patrons, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.